With the latest agriculture news from across the state and nation, it's time for the AgNet News Hour from AgNet West. Here's your host, Sabrina Halverson.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm Sabrina Halverson here with Lori Boyer. Good morning.
Good morning.
We're going to talk about something that, well, I think is kind of fun. I think you think it's fun too. And that is ag tech, and just kind of look at some of the latest things that have been brought up in agriculture. And this is one of those times when I wish that that we had video and we could show video of some of this ag tech in action, because it's just so neat. But Lori, what are some of the neat things that you have found lately?
Yes, this is probably my favorite topic to talk about. And we're going to use just a few examples today, but there's a lot more out there. And as you and I go along with the show, maybe other times we can talk about other technologies that are out there. But I came across three most recent ones. And of course, robotics is a big topic. And I think that'll, from now on, in my opinion, we will always, when we talk ag technology, we'll always have the word robotics, and we'll always have the words, I always going to say artificial insemination. I hate that. It just drives me nuts. AI,
Yes.
which is what intelligence, artificial intelligence. God, see, this girl has been doing this for so long with artificial insemination. I need, every time I'm going to talk about AI, I'm going to write this down from now on. Artificial intelligence. So as we go along with our farm broadcasting careers, Sabrina, when we talk about ag tech, I think we're always going to talk about AI, artificial intelligence, and we're always going to have the word robotics. I think they're always going to be in here. So starting off here, especially because we've talked about pollinators and their importance, especially in the specialty crops realm in California, scientists from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have developed an advanced robotic insect that could aid with artificial pollination. Now, if artificial insemination wasn't enough, now I got to talk about AP, artificial pollination. Actually,
Artificial pollination, kind of the same thing, really, when you think about the whole birds and the bees.
well, that's true. That is, you know what? That is a great point.
But I love this. Because pollination obviously is so important, and it's getting more difficult to make sure that we have the pollinator health that we need to. Now, there's two sides to this coin, as there is with everything that we ever talk about. One side being, I see the need for this, to have robotic bees, or little pollinators that are basically little robots that are out there pollinating the flowers. I wish that they weren't necessary. I have a tender spot in my heart for bees. I love pollinators and bees, and I, plant my pollinator gardens, and I love to work with the Project Apis M and promote what they do to their Seeds for Bees programs and all of this. I love it. But when we're talking about efficient agriculture, we need to know that pollination is happening efficiently. And so I can see where this is going with this artificial pollination. Artificial pollinators. What is the official term here?
Yeah, artificial pollinators. Yeah.
Artificial pollinators, making sure that pollination happens. Interesting. Kind of along those same lines, there's a company that I've interviewed a few times, and they've been on the show, Bee Hero. They are a company that they work with real bees, but they have used ag tech to be able to determine hive health. So they've got like sensors and things in the hives that can tell the beekeepers how healthy the hive is, if there are any problems that they need to be worrying about or fixing, and also to help lead to a more efficient pollination, especially for almonds. They really focus on almonds, which, one of the most heavily pollinated crops in California. So very interesting to see how technology is moving forward and advances in artificial intelligence. See, now I have to pause and think about it too. Artificial intelligence and artificial pollination. Fascinating.
So right now, these are being studied more in a controlled environment, like vertical farms, which again, I think that's going to come up over and over again as we see agriculture shift to feed more people on the planet. But these little robots, these pollinators, are about the size of a paper clip. They're actually very light, very small. They can hover for approximately 1,000 seconds. That's a lot longer than some of the beta models that were out there. And they can move really, really quickly. So another benefit is the time it takes to pollinate. it sounds like will be very much reduced. Now, I don't know the time it takes to pollinate a real bee versus one of
Mhm.
these. I really don't know that information, but it sounds like this can move through and get done rather quickly.
That is an interesting idea because pollination timing can be very sensitive and very, exact too. You want to make sure that for pollination efficiency, that the timing is not taking too long. That is a really interesting concept.
It's another precision agriculture model to me. I talk about precision agriculture primarily on row crops, I guess, with what I
Yeah.
do. But here we are talking about specialty crops and pollinators. I mean, you could target, just like you just said, timing. You can
Mhm.
target the amount of pollination as far as how long it's going to spend on each plant, when, morning, noon, night, seasons. I mean, it's just incredible the precision. And maybe one part of your vertical farm needs pollinated now or needs a little extra and the other one doesn't. You can just program these bees and tell it what to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what can be done. And then you don't have to worry about things like colony collapse disorder and the varroa mite and all of that that
Precisely.
are causing so many problems for our bees. So, and then, things like spray drift also. You don't have to worry about with I mean, I would imagine you probably don't want to get them into spray just because of liquids on your animatronics or whatever it is that we're talking about, but still much less delicate than actual bees. Let's keep talking about this. We do need to take a quick break, but we'll continue chatting about ag tech when we get back. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. She's Lori Boyer. We'll be right back. We're talking this morning about new tech in agriculture, and we both just love this topic. I love learning what new tech is out there. I know that you do too, Lori. What else have you found?
All right. Well, here's a California based company called Bonsai Robotics. I have seen this Bonsai Robotics come across my email here and there, but they've got some more funding put together to move forward with what they're doing. And what they are doing is autonomous. It's autonomous orchard harvesting equipment. And so, again, it's going to be a type of precision agriculture. This technology, and I know some of these abbreviations, to be honest with you, we don't spend our time in this field every day, but GNSS denied environments. So, if there's an environment, here's what I'm reading into that an environment that cannot get a cellular connection, Wi Fi, or internet, it is kind of hard to use autonomous. It's kind of hard to
Yeah.
use precision ag. They're making this so that you can use it in those environments, especially with dust, darkness, debris, elevation changes, vibrations, where you couldn't typically use this stuff. Now you can.
How does that work? That can be really important tech because when we're talking about our rural areas for farming, they may not have, areas where there's cell service or certainly not Wi-Fi. So having a tech that is usable in those areas, that's a game changer.
It really is. And so you also, this is what's cool too, is you can retrofit this hardware. It's actual hardware that we're talking about onto current orchard equipment. And it has cameras and some computers. And although I haven't read this directly, I haven't read on far enough maybe, but I'm assuming you can probably use your phone or any other digital device and just, sit in the comfort of your home or your tractor or your car and program it.
Yes. That again, extremely convenient. That's fascinating technology. I love that.
Yeah, and not only the technology itself and getting into those areas that I just mentioned that have traditionally been a little hard to get into, but this bonsai technology also makes it where harvesting can occur 24/7. So now when we're talking about efficiency, and I know that there is cost to retrofitting or buying this, I get that. But I would assume I'm assuming they went through this too, and it might be in here. I'm just making, just based on what I know and what farmers want, right? How much is this going to cost me with my return on investment? I'm going to assume the return on investment is there. Otherwise, they wouldn't be getting the investors they're getting. And then, as you and I've talked about with the challenges in finding labor, especially
Mhm.
now more than ever, I mean, this will help with those challenges.
That's what I was just thinking about with the labor aspect of this, and especially when you talk about, harvesting 24/7. you first off, you can have smaller crews. You will need somebody to run the automation, I'm sure. They're just at this point, I mean, I don't know this system specifically, but at this point in technology, there still needs to be a human present for much of it. But you don't have to have a whole harvest crew. And that is big because we are going to be facing labor shortages, especially with the deportations and things like that. Is just a fact of business. We're going to continue to see more labor shortages. So to have automation or equipment that can take the place so that we're not having to leave, fruit out in the fields,
Right.
that's big.
That's a great point because we talk about food waste quite a bit. And so
Hmm.
that can help with that issue. The other thing, especially in California, is we talk about emissions and dangerous emissions. According to Bonsai itself, this new technology will help to reduce emissions from agricultural equipment.
Well, that's important too. And we hear about that quite a bit in different things with like, with wanting to use 100% electric vehicles instead of gas burning vehicles because of emissions and things and our air district controls and things like that. So to have equipment that has less emissions also very important.
Yes, and I'm not here to necessarily promote them as a company or promoting the new technology that's in agriculture. And I just cannot, when I talk to people, I always say, do you realize how much new innovation, how much technology comes from the agriculture space? Yes, we are, get get out the duct tape. I mean, there's a lot of that that still goes on, which is pretty dang innovative, by the way. I just want to
True.
point that out. And I've been known, I carry some duct tape in my car for this exact reason, because you use it on almost everything. But I'm talking, I guess, more about this new advanced stuff that we're talking about as well. It just amazes me what our industry comes out with, Sabrina. Sometimes I look at these images of what people used to think agriculture looked like, and I'm thinking in my head right now that pitchfork of that older
Yeah.
man and that woman, and she's wearing kind of this old style dress or what have you. It's not that anymore. It is
Right.
not. The picture has changed.
Absolutely, the picture has changed, but we're going to continue talking about this when we get back. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. She's Lori Boyer. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. Here's Sabrina Halverson.
Welcome back. We are talking about ag tech. And you know what? Before the break, Lori, you had just a fantastic point. I thought that ag does not look the way it used to. When you think about the American Gothic picture, which is the old man and old woman standing with the pitchfork, and he's wearing the overalls and she's got the old drabby black dress on, that is not farming. I will admit I do own some overalls and I love them. However,
So do I. And I love them. Yes.
but right, but no, that is not farming. Farming is high tech, and farmers are innovative and resourceful, and they create things. And so some of the things that we're seeing come out of the ag industry, we already talked about the artificial pollination and we talked about automated harvesting. I remember, and I know you have something else to share with us, but real quickly, I'm going to tell you a story that I remember from a decade ago, I guess. And it was the first time I was at a field day, and it was the first time I saw a machine that could go down rows and target weeds and spray pesticide just on the weed and not on the plant. And I don't remember what crop it was. I want to say it was either cotton or tomatoes, just based on where I was in the western Fresno County area. But uh, that would, to me, I was so enthralled by this technology, watching the machine go down and know, exactly what was a weed and what was the actual crop. The fact that it could make that determination in just seconds and it was so effective and efficient. I continue to be amazed to this day.
And I have to point out that same type of technology has been a little harder in the row crops like corn,
Hmm.
although precision technology is used to target spraying and problem areas of fields. But getting under the corn canopy has been a big problem. And I can't remember the name of the company, but I just did a little story not too long ago in the Midwest on there is actually a robot out now that is addressing that. So when you talked about that, that's it kind of reminded
Yeah.
me of that article. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Um, technology in agriculture can involve so many other things too. When typically when I think of technology, I think of computers and equipment, but seed technology also.
Oh, yeah.
I have found to be very fascinating and not something I ever would have thought of as technology in the past, but the way that seeds have improved, and we have been able to improve seeds technology, and I use air quotes there, forgive me for that, but um, to improve seeds and to get a higher germination rate, to have plants that are resistant to certain things, like fungal infections and things like that. And these seeds come up not, and it's not like the scary lab coat mad scientist picture. There's things like crossbreeding that can take generations of plants and, a very natural process. We're just doing it in a more controlled environment too, to improve seed technology. Again, I'm just fascinated by it.
Yeah, the seed breeding that you're talking about, some of the lab work that's being done on inserting different genes, it is just it really is amazing. I love talking about this stuff. And now the seed coding. So you
Yeah.
might have the desired seed, but you want a little extra. Maybe I guess I'm thinking more in the Midwest because this is where a lot of that happens because of the massive acres of row crops. But I'm sure it's happening in the specialty crops. I just kind of know about that based on recent interviews. But there's several weeds and things out there. And now you can put coating over the top of seeds that are already bred for certain traits to improve yield. And now you can have an extra line of defense. And so the efficiency is allowing these farmers to get better yields quicker. They can plant earlier than normal. That's a whole new little phenomenon going on right now that we could talk about another day. But early planting of some of these more traditional commodities, I guess, if you will, is taking place because of the technology that you were talking about.
Right. In the last segment, we had talked a little bit about ag tech and labor, and how when we're facing labor shortages, ag tech can really come in. And again, this goes back to like machines, going back there. But I had another thought on that there have been, people will make comments on the machines taking the jobs. And I was talking with Walt DeFlock, who's with Western Growers, and this was back at when I was at the FIRA USA conference back in, gosh, I don't even remember what month that was, maybe October, and it was near Sacramento, Woodville kind of area. And so we were at the FIRA USA, which is all about ag tech, and it's a really fun. In fact, now that I know you like ag tech so much, Lori, you should really go to that next year. But so we were just talking, and he made a great comment that, this does not take jobs away from people. Having these automated systems and using tech like this, it's not taking the jobs away. It's giving people the ability to work in other positions.
Oh, okay.
So instead of having to labor in the field, you can, they're able to do other positions. So it's more like not reassessing. Oh gosh, I can't think of the word that I want, but giving people the opportunity to work in other positions rather than the more grueling, harder labor ones.
That is a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And we'll have to bring that up again when we're talking about these things, because I actually did just have a conversation with someone who said, I'm fearful that with AI and robotics, we're not going to have jobs in the future. And what does that mean? So I'm glad to hear that there's responses like that. It kind of gives you a different point of view, and that that's actually not the case. Yeah.
Right. And he made the point, people will always be needed. And like I said earlier in the show, anytime that there's, equipment involved, you do have to have a human somewhere in some aspect running that equipment. So it's just a matter of it's different jobs, not no jobs. The people will still have jobs. They're just going to look different than they do now. And that's okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on your words there, but you're talking kind of about the people that are running it, but you still have to have the manufacturers. You have to have the builders.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. There are people who have to put these things together too. So it's not that they're taking jobs away from humans, it's that we're having different jobs and a variety of other jobs for humans too. I'm totally okay with that.
Yes, I am too.
Putting it on a household perspective, having a robot that vacuums instead of me. I don't actually own one of those, but I like the idea of it.
I was thinking laundry folding. Is what
Yeah.
but
There you go. All right, we are going to continue to chat and look a little bit more ag tech when we come back. This is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. She's Lori Boyer. We'll be right back. We are talking this morning about ag tech, and we took a look at some new developments. Have you found any other new developments out there, Lori?
Yes, and at some point, I don't have a lot of information pulled up on this today, current information, but I've done a couple of interviews that I'd love to talk at some point about what solar panels looks like in grazing. They call it agrivoltaics. A lot of that's occurring in California, and so that's always interesting to talk about. And then also what they call, it's been called a few different things, but it's basically digital fencing. And so instead of having physical corral panels and barbed wire fence and things that we're used to seeing, literally these cattle are wearing collars or some sort of tracking device, but I think most cases right now it's collars. And again, you can sit back and control where those animals are at. You can move them around. If anything goes awry, you know something's up. I mean, there's so much you can do with that. So maybe sometime we can bring that into our conversation. But the other thing I found brand new here, kind of coming out here recently, is a company called RanchBot, and I believe they're in Texas, San Antonio, Texas. They actually have a monitoring system now, and I had to kind of read this to really understand it. So they're not actually selling waters, they're not actually selling tanks or anything like that, because at first glance, that's what I thought they were doing. No, what they're doing is they have a system, a technology system that you would purchase and you would put in place. And what it does is monitor those water tanks. And it tells you when you need to go water. It tells you when they're empty. And that is so important, especially, I mean, I know that you're in North Dakota, some of these cows don't get checked on for months out end. They're out in the pastures. And so this will save the farmer or rancher, I should say in this case, a lot of time, because they won't have to go out and worry about checking those tanks. Now, I know a lot of times there are some reservoirs or some small bodies of water, ponds and puddles that the cattle drink from, but also a lot of cattle do use tanks. They use big tanks. They use tanks with the windmills and such. You retrofit this technology onto your tank, and it will tell you if the tank is empty. On the flip side, it can also tell you if there's overwatering or flooding going on, especially if you're using something like a windmill or something else automated along with it. It can tell you those problem areas, so then you can save money because you're not overwatering and losing your water source.
That is really interesting. And like you said, especially in some areas that are, where you've got a large piece of land that your cattle are on, think about the amount of time
Right.
and resources that it can save just to have that information. I mean, I'm sure that there's probably an app you can get on your phone and check your everything. Just the amount of resources that saves without having to drive all the way out there and check all of your different tanks, that can be big.
Yeah, and it also appears so that's the main thing that RanchBot does, is monitor water levels, but they also offer pump controls. So like you said, you probably have your app. You can
Mhm.
monitor how much water goes in, the timing of that, all those things. It has rain gauges, because maybe you don't want to add water if you got some rain coming. And then, of course, monitor some of the troughs, the feeding troughs, that, how much feed goes into those. I mean, there's probably a lot more to that than we have time here for today, but really monitoring the levels are just going back to the water discussion. Monitoring those water levels can save so much time, and especially in the winter, when you're not sure exactly, do I got to go break some ice? I mean, you might still have to do that because it doesn't say anything about breaking ice, but
Yeah.
it just will really help you. And if you don't have to drive out there, you don't have to drive out into that pasture, how much time that would save you.
Yeah, that's just enormous. And that's kind of what it comes down to with all of this different ag tech is the advancements they're making business better. They're using time more efficiently, pollinating more efficiently, and creating, more jobs, different jobs for humans so that we can focus on other things. So I'm all for it. And I love this discussion. I could talk about it all day. We're out of time though. But I suspect we will continue talking about ag tech in the future. For now, this is the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. She's Lori Boyer. We'll be right back. This segment is brought to you by Valent USA. And for this segment, we're talking with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. We're talking about what California growers need to be thinking about this time of year. right, Todd. So we're looking at Valent and crops that are looking at products and things and to make our crops the healthiest that they can be midwinter, starting out mid-January. What are you looking at for crops at this time?
During the dormant period for your perennial crops, you want to take into consideration overwintering insect pests and diseases. Starting with insects, I think the biggest thing is probably scale on your almonds and tree fruit. San Jose scale is problematic, and if left unchecked, it can take out scaffolds. It starts in pockets usually in an orchard, and then it just spreads out. We have a really good tool for that. It's called a steam insecticide. Basically, it's a PGR that stops the molting process of the instars from the first, second instars all the way to the adult. It also sterilizes the female. So the eggs that are laid, they don't hatch. And so you have basically a pretty good tool there for knocking out an entire population. Some people say steam works so well, you only have to spray it every 3 years. It doesn't last for 3 years, first of all. It lasts maybe a couple weeks or so. But the effects of it, if done properly with good coverage, and coverage is key. I really want to emphasize coverage. If you get good coverage, you get good kill or effect on the insects to not go forward basically in their life cycle. And that's probably the biggest deterrent to getting really good results with the steam, is using it with coverage in mind. Going too fast, not enough volume. Also, the addition of dormant oil works really well with it. And for tree fruit, we're just bringing back this year. We've had it. It was an older product. We've had it for a long time. Seize. It's a wettable powder. It comes in water-soluble pouches, 55 ounces per pouch. We're bringing that back to the market after it was taken out for a couple of years. And then we said there was a lot of demand for it, so we brought it back. Both the Seize and the steam both have the same active ingredient, pyriproxyfen. Work the same. Seize got a different complex of crops on its label compared to the Esteem, but they both work the same. So it just depends on what you want to go after. And also in that period, if you're done with early citrus, you can go out and you can spray Esteem on the citrus as well for red scale. It's not the best timing because you really want to get the crawlers later on in the spring. But if you get good coverage with Esteem, it really doesn't make any difference what time of year you spray it, because any adults are going to be stifled. They're not going to kill them. They're going to cycle out. But any nymphs or underdeveloped stages, early stages of insect growth will be stifled. They won't grow. They grow out of their exoskeleton basically, and they're subject to the elements and die. That's the thing for no-dormant insecticides. You've also got Asana. Asana is a broad-spectrum pyrethroid, third, fourth generation pyrethroid. Asana's attributes are that it lasts a lot longer. It's because of the inerts in it, the cottonseed-based product, cottonseed oil-based adjuvant basis to it, and it tends to stick around a little longer. And then we've lost Lorspan in the last few years, got banned, but Asana can fill a gap there with long residual broad-spectrum control, similar to that of Lorspan as far as the spectrum of activity on a broad range of insects, both Lepidopteran overwintering larvae, as well as mites, and also the scale. It has some effect on scale. Biggest thing on scale, though, I would say was use the Steam. It really works there.
When we're talking about scale, is it something that growers should watch for signs of or treat before there's any signs of insects that could cause problems?
Scale is one of those things where if you don't look for it, you don't see it. But if you look for it, a trained eye can see it. If you have an infestation, it will actually kill limbs, branches, limbs, even scaffolds if left unchecked. So you don't want it to get that far, obviously. So prophylactic treatments are definitely better than going on after the fact. Once you see any scale activity, typically you'll see it on stone fruit, you'll see it on the fruit. You'll see it move on the fruit. If you got scale in your fruit this year, or last year rather, in 2024, I would definitely treat for scale in the midwinter dormant period, because that scale's still out there, it's still thriving, and it's gonna expand. Basically, they have a very high fecundity. A lot of eggs are laid, and if they're feeding off their food sources there, so there's not a shortage of food. So that gives them the ability to reproduce pretty rapidly. Again, high level of fecundity. So taking them out early is better than waiting. If you see them on fruit, it's really too late, especially on stone fruit.
We will continue with Todd Bergdahl right after this. This is the AgNet News Hour. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the AgNet News Hour. We continue with this segment sponsored by Valent USA. We are talking with Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent. So with this being the rainy season, does that make a difference in application?
You don't want to get it washed off. Esteem NCs are both they're contact materials. You need to get them on. And I recommend using oil, 415 oil or crop oil. 415 oil is probably the best. At about 1% volume per volume, so a gallon per 100 minimum. You could go up to 2 or 3 gallons in a dormant period without any problems. In fact, the more oil, the better coverage I think you get. Again, going slow, don't go fast, don't spray fast. Anything over a couple miles an hour, I term as fast, and speed does not kill. You've got to get good coverage. If you're coming up against a rainstorm, I would wait till after the rain. In between rains is better for you. You've got at least a day or so of drying time. Once it's on the pest, the activity is going, it's activated. It's just a matter of you spray right now and then it rains a couple hours later. And I'd say your application was probably compromised, depending on how much rain you got, of course. You just get a little sprinkle, that's one thing, but you get a down drencher with a quarter or so or more of rainfall, quarter of inch of rainfall or more. I would say you probably need to retreat or just wait until there's not going to be any rain in the near forecast for the next couple of days, then spray.
All right, that all makes sense. Good advice there too. What else should our California growers be thinking about this time of year?
There's always weeds. Weeds keep people in business. They're never-ending weeds. Lots of seeds. There's talk about high fecundity. Weeds take the prize there. Yeah, getting on a pre-emergent herbicide earlier rather than later. If you wait till January now, I would say you're going to have to put some type of post-emergent product in with it. Although a lot of guys will wait till later on, till now, to make the application for pre-emergent for trees, vines, any perennial crops, because they get more longevity out of it. They spray it now, and typically you get about 4 to 5 months of good, solid control. If you do that in November, by February, your product and it's gone through the rainy season too, it's starting to peter out a little bit. Whereas if you put it on now, you can take you all the way through till early summer. So putting it on now, though, you're probably going to have some emerged weeds, so you can have to put a post-emergent product with it, glufosinate, paraquat, gramoxone. That's actually my favorite because I know exactly what you know the coverage you get when you spray a product like gramoxone. You spray it, and you go back the next day, and you can see exactly where you sprayed because the weeds are already affected. There's other burn-down products out there. I don't need to get into those, but the biggest thing is getting enough Chateau. Chateau is flumioxazine. It's a PPO herbicide. There's several PPOs out there. Chateau's claim to fame is pre-emergent activity. It's got a high adsorption coefficient, so it sticks to the clay colloids in the soil very tightly. Therefore, it lasts a lot longer in the upper levels of the soil where you need it to be to affect those germinating weed seeds. And basically, it's good solid control at the 12-ounce rate, 4 to 5 months. I would say conservatively 4 to 5 months, up to 6 months on heavier soils. And again, the tank mix, there really is no silver bullets out there. Everybody to think our product is a silver bullet. You just need to put our product on. Chateau is good. It's a good tool, but there's a few gaps in the weed spectrum that it controls. Grasses, for example. You might want to put in a product like pendimethalin. Prowl works very well in a tank mix. And actually, a tank mix that I have been using and recommending is 12 ounces of Chateau, an ounce of Allion, and then full half gallon or a gallon of Prowl. That's a Cadillac mix, but it works really well. And you get the whole spectrum of weeds. Nothing really walks through it, with the exception of maybe a nutsedge that could, if you have a high infestation of nutsedge, and that's a different story altogether. Nutsedge, you might want to use Roundup on the early part of the season to get it back and knock it out. But there's a lot of options out there for weed control. There's both pre and post. Like I said, there really is no silver bullets. Typically, you're going to have to use a tank mix. And the Chateau Allion, a little bit of Allion goes a long ways. Too much is not good either. A little bit of Allion or Matrix works well as well. Actually, we're going to be bringing a product to market very soon. It'll be a combination of Chateau and Matrix together, and that should be out probably next year.
So that's definitely something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, it just fills the gap. It's just one less thing to have to measure out and put in the tank. It's already done for you. That's the biggest advantage. It's still probably going to need a burn down material with it if you've got emerged weeds. One thing I will mention about the emerged weeds, if you've got mare's tail or flea pain out there, I would highly recommend using something like glufosinate. Roundup can work, cannot work. I think there's biotypes that are definitely tolerant or maybe even resistant, I don't know. But getting it early is better than getting it late. It's always better to kill these weeds early. Most people know that. It's not a big secret. Start early, start clean, stay clean. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And it's always easier to prevent weeds at the early stages of development, 1 to 2 leaves, rather than waiting till they're, in the case of like flea bane and mare's tail, where they're already going past that, and you've got 6, 8 true leaves, and it's starting to get a floret or something like that. I forget the exact terminology, but basically it's spreading out. At that point, the root system's down there 8 to 10 inches deep, and it's a harder animal to kill. Starting early definitely makes a difference. Pre-emergent is actually the best time to start, before the weeds come up. That way you get good distribution of the spray of the pre-emergent herbicide. They never see the light of day.
Yeah, it's always better to stop them before they have a chance to start.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, most of the problems I get called out on are it was too little, too late, or too fast. Again, speed does not kill. Go slow, get good coverage. Good distribution uniformity is really key with pre-emergent herbicides.
Yeah.
Keeping the ground clean, getting that soil's got nice tilt to it, ground's clean, not a lot of debris to intercept that, to tie up the herbicides, and then getting enough water on top of it to activate it, to incorporate it into the top soil layer of soil as well. That's really key. Whether through irrigation, if rain. In California, we've always said don't count on the rain because it's maybe not going to happen. So during this wet season, that's the time to make the application. If indeed you can count on it, and the predictors are accurate in their predictions for a rainfall.
And that was Todd Bergdahl, Field Market Development Specialist with Valent USA. And again, if you'd like to get more information about anything he talked about, just head online to valent.com. That's our show for today. This has been the AgNet News Hour. I'm Sabrina Halverson. On behalf of Lori Boyer and myself, thank you for sharing your morning with us.